Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on item 7.2 in the minutes, which refers to 87 and 89 Dumfries Street. I just happened to be looking at realtor.ca this week, and that site is up for sale. Just an observation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. You know, I'll be we've seen that a few times. Applications come before us, we have big debates, and then it goes one way or another. And then a few weeks later, we see them up for sale. So not unusual. So, okay, any other business? Seeing none, that'll take us to the first hearing. And please note, for anybody that's watching or here tonight, we're going to look at 4 applications this evening under item 7, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and 7.4. Those first 4 applications that we're hearing tonight, we are not looking for a decision. These are just for information gathering. So just like I say, for anybody listening in or here tonight. So the first one we have up is RPT 21-66. This is item 7.1 on the agenda. And this is for Hookstron, 231-6 Concession Road. So I'll ask our planner, Amanda, if she'd like to present. And your screen is up.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. Thank you. Through the chair. The applicant is seeking relief from the zoning bylaw in regards to MDS. The applicant is seeking a reduction in the required MDS to facilitate the construction of a dwelling on an existing lot of record and for the dwelling to be located outside of the identified natural heritage area. The applicant is specifically seeking relief from the neighboring livestock barn of 66 meters and from the neighboring manure storage of 106 meters. In terms of the official plan, the subject lands are designated as agricultural and natural heritage. Lands designated as agricultural are permitted 1 dwelling as of right, whereas dwellings are not permitted on the portions designated as natural heritage. The required MDS places the proposed dwelling within the natural heritage area and specifically a wetland. And then in terms of zoning, the subject lands are zoned as agricultural and natural heritage. As mentioned, agricultural lands are permitted 1 dwelling as of right. The identified natural heritage on the subject lands constrain the placement of the dwelling, and as a result, the applicants are seeking this reduction. And then in terms of next steps, staff will be preparing a recommendation report, which will include a policy analysis. And I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
All right, thank you, Amanda. I'll turn it over to the committee. Is there anybody that has a question of Amanda at this time? Okay, Councillor Goward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Amanda. The planning policy page 17 of our package that shows the view and the properties outlined in red. There's a little portion that is M2 that is cut out of this property. Is there a house on that? And was that formerly severed from these lands?
Thank you through the chair. I don't believe there is a house on that dwelling, but in my report, I will confirm that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to be clear, Councillor Gatward, you are referring to page 17 of our package.
Yes, of 183.
Yep. Okay.
And
okay, so we've got
the cutout piece closer to Highway 53.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, any other questions for Amanda? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Bell, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Amanda. For the benefit of the viewing public, some while ago we had a request for a rezoning on properties in West Harris Road or West Harris Street over on the east side of the county. And the issue at play was really about MDS. We rejected that application. Why would we accept this one and not accept the other one? Could you give me the short answer to that?
Thank you through the chair. The main difference between this application and that application is, one, they were looking to create new building lots, and those new building lots were going to be on lands designated as rural residential. Whereas this application, it's an existing lot of record and it's designated as agricultural and natural heritage.
Thank you. That's very clear.
Can I comment?
You'll have a chance in a minute.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee for the planner at this time? I just have one, Amanda, just the barn in question, it's not being used currently, is that correct?
Thank you through the chair. That's my understanding. It is not being used currently.
And it hasn't been used for a while, I think. Okay. All right, no other questions. We'll go to the applicant, if there's one here, or their agent to present on this. Joe, is that you, Joe?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, go ahead if you want to speak to it.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that it hasn't been used for many years, probably about, what's that? Decades, like almost 30 years. It's a smaller parcel of land that wouldn't even be suitable to have a livestock operation. They would have to go through an MDS2 to ever MDS2 calculation if they would ever want to reestablish that as a livestock operation, basically start from scratch, because the facility has just been run down. But even within an MDS2, the setbacks would be less than what we would be asking or relief from. Note to that other M zoning there, that's Titan Trailers, and there is no residential house on that property. Is there anything else?
Okay, does that conclude your
Yeah.
presentation? Okay, thank you, Joe. Are there any questions for the applicant's agent at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Joe. At this point, I'm gonna open this up to the public, and I'll ask our clerk, is there anyone from the public here tonight that wishes to speak to this application? And you're muted.
I'm muted. No, Mr. Chair, there is no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And I'll ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And seeing and hearing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and we'll bring it back to committee, and I'll ask the committee how they'd like to deal with this this application at this time. Councillor Wheat, move to receive.
Information.
Thank you. Seconded by Mayor Bailey. Any comments or questions before we move on? Call the vote. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? I see none. So just to be clear to Joe Smith and to the your clients, the Hookstrons, this is just for information. The clerk will take that under consideration when she comes forward with the recommendation, which we'll see either next month or the next month or whenever she's got the application done. Okay, that concludes that one. 7.1, we're going to move on to 7.2 again for information, and this one is 7.2 on our agenda, RPT 21-100. And this is ZBA 14-21 for Paris Meadows Limited, which is 274 Pottruff Road, -989 Rest Acres Road. And are going to ask our planner, Ryan, if you'd like to present. And I see your presentation's already up. So go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subject lands are located on the south side of Powerline Road, on the west side of Pottruff Road, north of Highway 403 in Paris. Subject lands are approximately 44.75 hectares in size and are currently vacant with pre-servicing and grading activity underway for the entirety of the Kingwood Paris Meadows subdivision. That would be phase 1 of this subdivision. The subject lands are situated within the primary urban settlement area of Paris and are designated urban residential and natural heritage in the official plan. The applicant is proposing to amend the existing special exception residential multiple low density RM1-37 zone to permit a minimum lot area of 165 square meters whereas 185 square meters is currently required. Through the circulation of notices, several members of the public have provided comments indicating concern with the perception of additional unit density being sought through this zoning bylaw amendment. The applicant, in fact, requires this zoning bylaw amendment due to the depth of the blocks that were established through the original draft plan of subdivision in 2019. My colleague Marcus Davidson looked after that one at the time. In providing the original minimum lot frontage of 6 meters as required within the RM137 zone, it currently wouldn't be possible for them to meet the minimum lot area with the current depth of the townhouse blocks as configured. They're somewhere, I think, in the range of 27 to 29 meters in depth, and therefore the minimum lot frontage doesn't add up to meet the 185 square meters of lot area that's required. I would note then that in consultation with the applicant, it appears that this provision related to minimum lot area was overlooked through the original zoning bylaw amendment corresponding with that draft plan of subdivision. So in reviewing the original staff report, the proposal had contemplated a total of 400 units with approximately 66 townhouse unit. The applicant has confirmed that the proposed lot fabric remains consistent with the original draft plan of subdivision, and that the total unit count does not exceed 400 units, and that this is to address what, again, I think was an oversight. It was a very large and complex file, and there was one provision that was missed. And so next steps for this application would be to complete the internal and external circulation for comments, and following this, the application will be brought forward at a later date for formal recommendation. This concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Any questions for our planner at this time? We'll go to Councillor House first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, to Ryan. So just to be clear, this application does not result in more dwelling units. It just results in the same number of dwelling units having a smaller front yard.
Well, the first part is correct, if I may, Mr. Chair. The net total units will remain unchanged. I'll ask Mr. Salsley to confirm the number in his comments, but additionally, it's the lot area that's going to be modified. The lot frontage actually will remain unchanged at 6 meters. I think that's a key piece to keep in mind, because really the lot frontages remaining unchanged will result in the number of units remaining unchanged. These are through lots. They're fronting internal to the subdivision as well as Powerline Road. And so when you're limited in frontage, we're still limiting the number of units. It's a lot area that we need to address here. And again, Eric might be able to comment on that a little bit more in depth.
Okay, Councillor House, any other questions?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Density will stay the same. But we'll check with Eric in a second. Any other questions from the committee to our planner before we go to the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Eric, is there anything you wanted to present tonight or help us get work through? Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Yeah, as Ryan had indicated, I think you described the application quite well. The overall number of units is not going to change. In the concept plan that we presented back in July of 2019, when council considered the approval of the application, there was approximately the concept plan showed a total of 60 townhouse units, whereas in the more detailed plans that have been prepared and we're working through, it's actually less than that. It's 54 townhouse units. And as I indicated in my covering letter, which is attached to the council package, this is consistent. You know, seeking the 165 square meters is consistent with other site-specific RM1 zones in the Paris community. The RM120 and 21 zones are for 165 square meters as a minimum lot area, and the RM120 is actually 150, which is less than what's being sought here. So these townhouse units are along the north end of the plan of subdivision, and they back on to the hydro corridor along Powerline Road. So in fact, you know, would have a perceived larger setback from a power line road. And in our view, these are reflective of more contemporary standards. And I note that some of the written correspondence was with concerns with traffic, and the applications were supported by traffic studies that looked at 400 units, and this is looking like less or comparable to the same number of units that were approved in the draft plan of subdivision.
Okay. Anything else there, Ted?
No, I'm available for any questions that committee may have.
Okay. Okay, we'll go to the committee members, and we'll start with Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, a couple questions I have. So, okay, I appreciate the fact that you're coming for this adjustment now. I'm not sure. Can you tell me why this wasn't requested when the original application went through? And the second question I have is, if we're making the lot areas smaller, how is that going to affect parking? Because as everybody knows, we've got a huge issue with parking with the number of vehicles. And I just want to confirm that there will, in fact, how many vehicles are we stating per driveway, per garage, and that sort of information, if you could, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Eric, you want to give that a crack?
Sure. I think it was it was fairly complex. There's multiple zones in this plan of subdivision, and I think it was overlooked. And my apologies for that. We were dealing with a number of different site-specific conditions and provisions in this. But as Ryan said, the minimum lot frontage is 6 meters. We're looking at approximately 6.1 meters in terms of frontage, which is permitted in the base RM1 zone. And it's just the lot depths, which are fairly standard in terms of the overall lotting. And just in terms of parking, we're anticipating that each of the individual units will have a parking space in the garage as well as a room in the driveway. And the townhouses are really along the northern blocks of the plan of subdivision. And there's also, throughout the remainder of the residential portion of the subdivision, there are single detached lots, and there's opportunities for on-street parking throughout that, given the location of driveways and whatnot.
Follow up if I could, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, through you. I appreciate that, Eric. I know exactly where it is. It's just up the hill from me. I'm at the bottom of the Mile Hill there. But what I want to understand is, so as far as the width of the properties, that is not changing. It's only the depth of the backyard is changing. So that said, the space in between the driveways, I know it talks of trying to double up the driveways where you can on these units. Is that still the plan?
I believe that is the plan. Just the lots are going to be developed by lived communities, and they've prepared some elevations, which I think were on the presentation that Ryan had done, some sample elevations. And as well, there's some opportunities throughout the single detached portions, like opposite the roads, that could accommodate on-street parking as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant's agent at this time in the committee? Seeing none, I'll turn to our clerk to see if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this.
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you. But I will ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And seeing none, I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll ask committee how they'd like to deal with this. 7.2. We'll go to Councillor Coleman to receive, and Councillor Pierce has seconded. Any questions, discussions before we call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, Eric, I think you know how this works. That's just for information, of course, but it's obviously in the works, so we will continue. So thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
This will take us to item 7.3, and this is report 21-98, ZBA 33-20-KD. Telephone City Aggregates, Restacre Road and Bethel Road. And we will get our planner, Kayla, to come forward and do her presentation. Kayla, are you showing something on your screen?
Yes, thanks through the chair. I'm just going to share my screen. If you could just let me know when you see it, that'd be great.
and it's there.
Perfect. Okay, so this is a draft plan of subdivision and zoning application before you tonight from Telephone City Aggregates on behalf of MHBC for lands located at Bethel Road and Rest Acres. The proposal before us this evening is the application for draft plan approval and subdivision zoning for an industrial development located at the northeast corner of Rest Acres Road and Highway 24 and Bethel Road in the town of Paris. The proposal before you tonight is for 10 blocks, which would be for industrial and light industrial uses. And I should also note that there will be blocks dedicated to stormwater management, overland flow, and a pumping station. The proposal that you see on the screen here this evening is still subject to change as we work through continued review of studies such as the servicing studies and the traffic impact studies. But for the most part, this is the development plan and proposal. As part of this proposal, we've also received several studies which complete the application. So these studies would include some things such as functional servicing, grading, hydrogeological study, geotechnical, environmental impact study, traffic impact study, as well as source water protection information. The official plan designates these lands as employment, and these lands are also located within a site-specific area, which deems them as priority employment. The proposal is to develop these lands for prestige and light industrial, which would also include some office uses. And the application does note that the blocks which would front onto Rest Acres are intended to contain more of the prestige industrial uses, with enhanced architecture and landscape along that corridor. In terms of the zoning, the current zoning on these lands is an M1, a light industrial with a holding provision, as well as a small portion shown in green, which is natural heritage. The zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to rezone these lands for an appropriate range and mix of prestige and light industrial uses. And you'll also note that the zoning proposes what you see as an XX, and this represents some site-specific uses. These uses will be clarified as we move further along in the planning process and as the owner sort of works with potential businesses to locate in the area. So in terms of next steps, I wanted to point out that we do have some concerns which have been raised from neighbors on this proposal. So we will continue to work on consultation with neighbors to address concerns that we're hearing. We've heard concerns related to source water protection, and we've also heard, for example, some comments related to maintaining the hedgerow of trees, mature trees along Bethel and along Potroff. And so these discussions have been happening with the neighbors. The agent, MHBC, is aware, and we're happy to work out solutions and options with the neighboring properties as we work through the planning process. In terms of next steps, we will be reviewing comments from internal and external agencies, and then we will be recirculating the application and bringing it back to council for recommendation at a later date. And I know we do have a presentation from MHBC this evening, as well as some neighbors, but that is it for me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Let me just fix my screen up. Okay, is there any questions from the committee members to our planner? I'll go to Councillor Bell first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our planner. I noticed that we're asking for some lands to be zoned M2-XX, and I didn't see any M2-XX on the plans that I saw. Am I missing something?
Kayla.
Through the chair, I would say that the exact lands and the exact zoning is still yet to be determined. And so I think Dave could probably speak to that, but I do note that they will be submitting a revised zoning details to us, and those specifics will come forward at the recommendation stage.
Thank you. Another question which may be answered by the applicant's presentation. I'd like to hear more about the stormwater management design. It looks fairly unusual. And the specific question I have is what happens when that stormwater management pond fills? Where does it overflow to?
Okay, do you want to leave that for the applicant then, Councilor Bell? Fair enough. Dave, make a note of that. We're going to stormwater management pond. Any other questions from the committee to our planner? And keep in mind, yeah, we're still early stages. Okay, Councilor Goward, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to planner. You mentioned that you have a various list of studies that are available that have been completed by the applicant. And those studies are all available to the neighbors and to us as well, correct? Because I would like to see the hydro G report.
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward, yes, that's correct. These studies that are submitted are public information. Some of these studies have been shared with neighbors already, and I'm happy to share any of these reports with council. So we can definitely get that information out to you for sure.
Thank you very much.
Kayla, just following up on what Councilor Gatward said, we can all access these, can we not, through the website, through the county website? The studies?
Through the chair, we can make sure that these studies are all uploaded to the website, and I can follow up to confirm that they're all on there.
Okay, sorry. It's not a matter of course to do that. Like I know I've asked you in the past for studies on other applications, and you've been good about it. You email it to me like right away. But are these not, as a matter of fact, don't we do that automatically, or is it just something we have to request? And maybe that's not a fair question to you.
Sure. Through the chair, I believe that the current applications are all listed on our county website. I don't believe that we have all the studies uploaded, but by all means, they are public information. So we're happy to share through email and make sure everyone has access.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay. Any other questions for our planner before we go to the applicant's agent? Seeing none. Okay. And Dave, you got your presentation ready to go? Dave Aston?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so your screen is up. Thank you. So go ahead.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening, and thanks to county staff and Caleb for providing the overview this evening. And I did make note of some questions, so I'll try and answer those through my presentation. And we have received the comments that have been submitted, and we'll try to respond to some of those as well in the presentation. But I just want to start out by saying that we are happy to meet with, I saw Mr. Potruff on the line, and any members of Five Oaks to further explain and clarify the studies and the details and the plans associated with the proposal. So we can follow up with Kayla, and perhaps we can arrange for any further meeting or discussion with those adjacent landowners to provide additional information, because we can only cover so much tonight. So the subject lands, as you can see here, rehabilitated aggregate operation. You can see through kind of the middle of the site is a old haul road, and so generally this is the site. The OPP station was taken out of these lands somewhat in the past, and so we're looking to develop these lands for industrial purposes. So the lands are 44 hectares, 109 acres, designated employment, actually zoned M1 employment currently as well. A range of block sizes. We're looking to provide opportunity for a mix of potential users. And we've identified kind of some different colors here, a light purple or pink as light industrial. That's where we would see the M1 zone with additional permissions for warehouse and some other types of uses. And then in the blue would be the M2 zone, so maybe more typical industrial. And the XX in the M2 would be to exclude some of the heavy industrial uses that are permitted within that zone. The green is a channel for stormwater management. There's a stormwater management pond. And then in the corner on the southeast, we've also identified a pumping station. So a pumping station is required for this development. We'll be working with county staff on the details and location of that, and I'll speak to that a little bit more. There's a new municipal road that's planned to connect Bethel to Pot Roof. The idea of the new municipal road is to minimize traffic on the existing roads and try and accommodate as much as possible through the new road to facilitate the development of the subdivision. The zoning, we are proposing a landscape buffer along Bethel Road. We do know the existing trees are there, and we'll need further discussion with the county on what that landscape buffer is and the potential for tree retention based on the potential need to widen Bethel Road. But in any event, we are planning a landscape buffer along Bethel Road. And I saw comments with regard to Pot Roof, and generally with the Pot Roof, there's the stormwater management pond, but again, a landscape buffer surrounding the existing house on Pot Roof Road, that's something we could also explore. So the proposed zoning, again, is a mix of M1 and M2. Again, just trying to provide that flexibility for future employment users and try to locate the, as Kayla referenced, the prestige industrial uses to Rest Acres and Bethel Road, and locate the other industrial uses internal. The lands, as I mentioned, there's a holding provision now on the lands on the M1 zone, and we would be looking to remove that as part of the process upon the conclusions associated with the municipal servicing. This just illustrates the draft plan of subdivision. The stormwater management channel and the pumping station and the storm pond are identified. And again, to Councillor Bell's comment, the storm pond, it appears to be an odd size or shape based on kind of the various components. What we understand is that pumping station location may slip slightly to the west, which will then provide for a somewhat different configuration of the pond. But at this point, that's the design of the pond, and it's appropriately designed to accommodate the subdivision flows. As mentioned by Kayla, the lands are designated employment. They're part of the site-specific policy area, which identifies these lands as priority employment area. And I know the council is aware of this corridor, Rest Acres and 403, is certainly a priority area for future employment uses. I mentioned the existing zoning and the holding provision. So the proposed zoning is to keep a portion of lands at M1 and add additional uses through the M2 zone. As far as some of the studies, a functional servicing and stormwater management report, I want to just try and provide some clarification. So full municipal services are proposed: water, sanitary, and stormwater. The stormwater management pond on the lands is sized to accommodate the subject lands to match the pre and post development requirements. The stormwater management channel that you see in the east-west through the site provides the legal outlet for the emergency overland flows from adjacent property. So the adjacent property is the county employment lands. There's a stormwater management pond just on the other side of Rest Acres Road. So this channel is only required for emergency overland flows. And the overland flow follows Bethel Road. It would be on the north side of Bethel Road down toward the creek. The overland flow would only occur in the regional storm. It's not designed to have a consistent flow. It's the regional storm flow that is the only time that channel or the overland flow would need to occur through the storm pond. Otherwise, the pond would be matching the pre to post flows to the legal outlet at the north side of Bethel Road. And we've walked Bethel Road and the storm outlet with county staff. And so the details associated with that design would occur at the detailed engineering design stage as part of the conditions of draft plan and a subdivision. As I mentioned, the sanitary pumping station will be working through county staff on the final location of that associated with which alternative and which pumping station and which force main is suited best in association with the lands and planning for future lands. The hydrogeological report, there will be infiltration of water using low impact design measures to mitigate potential loss of pre-development infiltration. So that is something that we'll be looking for, and there'll be direction to each lot as well as far as potential stormwater. The groundwater flow is in a southwesterly direction toward Whiteman's Creek. And as I mentioned, we're happy on the hydrogeological report to meet with the adjacent landowners. I know our hydrogeological consultant, Stan Denhoed, had met yesterday with Five Oaks just to provide some information and receive some feedback. So we're more than happy to meet and provide further information. With regard to the environmental impact assessment on the policy framework, you would have seen there's a green area identified on the site. The environmental impact assessment supports the removal of that feature. Discussions on the removal of that feature occurred very early on with GRCA staff, and the process for consideration of removal of that feature fell within the GRCA policies associated with removal of a feature. And as I get into the conclusions, we have received comments from the GRCA on that feature. And the environmental impact assessment recommends the typical monitoring associated with future development. The traffic impact study.
Mr. Aston, you just have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, traffic impact study was prepared and submitted. It's being reviewed by county staff. It took a phased approach, and improvements may be required to accommodate the full build out of the site, but not the starting phase of development. So that's something we're working through with county staff. In conclusion, the lands are within a strategic employment area. They represent a key opportunity for the county to provide service-ready lands for future employment development. The policy direction supports the development of lands for employment purposes. And with regard to the feature, we've been receiving comments from the county and agencies And the GRCA has confirmed no objections to the applications or removal of that natural feature, and provided draft plan conditions for consideration in the county staff report. So that's our presentation this evening. And again, a lot to cover, a lot of details associated with hydrogeological, servicing, geotechnical, and between now and the next report that would come to council, we'll work with county staff to make sure that there's appropriate consultation with the landowners that have made comments. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions or respond if there's any questions or comments through the additional delegations.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I'll start with Councillor Bell, because you had that first question about stormwater management. Did you feel that that was adequately answered? Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought there was a lot of good information brought forward there. The regional storm, I have no idea quite what that is, but my question that relates to that is, you talked about overland flow going southeasterly to Whiteman's Creek. Does that imply it's going through the lands owned by neighbours and Five Oaks? And if so, do we need an agreement? Do you need an agreement with them before that can happen? I'm sort of reflecting back on the discussions that we had, or the former council had, with the residential site just to the north of the sports complex, and the challenges that faced with runoff of water from that site.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, the stormwater outlet associated with the typical flows, there's my understanding, and we can provide further clarification, is that there is a ditch along Bethel Road, and that provides the legal outlet. The hurricane, the 100-year or the regional storm is the Hurricane Hazel storm, and that's the overland flow that I'm talking about, and the route that would be along Bethel Road as well. And so that's what that channel is relating to, is making sure that there's an overland flow route if that Hurricane Hazel storm hits, and that amount of water is not contained within the storm ponds. So it's that emergency overflow that is being provided, and that would also be along Bethel Road. And we can work with county staff and provide further clarification, but that's the general summary of how that's working.
Just a quick follow-up, Dave. Could you tell me whether that requires you to have a formal agreement with the landowners?
Through Mr. Chair, not if there's already a legal outlet and it's within the road right of way. If it truly is on private property, we would need to have some discussion with the county about how to approach agreements.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was a good question. Okay, Councillor Gower, go ahead. And then we'll go to Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The new street that's being created, the entrances are on Potter's Road and Bethel Road. And you mentioned briefly perhaps widening Bethel Road. Is there enough traffic being created out of this industrial subdivision to warrant the widening of Bethel Road? And if the answer is yes, can any of the width be taken from the south side of the road so the trees aren't impacted?
Okay.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, it's something that county staff had advised may be required, so we can continue to confirm with county staff on the need to widen Bethel Road, and I will leave the direction of the widening to stand until we know if we are widening, and I just suggest that because to widen on the other side of the road, creates a different discussion as to how that land is obtained for the road widening purposes.
Councilor Goward?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it would create issues, and I guess I'm just concerned about the trees, as are the neighbors, and
Okay.
I was trying to find a way to save the trees if it needs widening. Maybe there's a way of widening and saving the trees. I don't know, because tonight's the first time I'm hearing about widening, and the trees add to the character there and the neighborhood. So I'm pleased to hear that you're working with the neighbors. I think Five Oaks brings a lot of guests to our county economic development, and we certainly don't want to impact their unique water system that they have there at Five Oaks. And I'm glad that discussions are happening. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Dave. In the discussion about the possible widening of Bethel Road, I'm just curious, has there been any consideration given to making the entrance to the industrial park down the existing road that is there in the middle? I know it's not a true road at this point in time, but the access is there. And, you know, with the location of this by the 403, I think it's safe to say that the majority of the vehicles coming in and out would be heading for the 403. So anything coming out of the industrial park is just a right turn onto the 403, and coming in, there may be enough room there for a turning lane. So I'm just curious, you know, has there been any thought given to that center access road to be used, and then you wouldn't have to worry about any trees on Bethel or widening Bethel or any of that?
Okay.
Through Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think that, isn't that an MTO issue? But have you
Yeah,
looked into that?
Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, it's a great question. Our original proposal at the pre-consultation showed an access to rest acres at that exact location.
Mm-hmm.
With our argument that it's an existing access, we were told by MTO, absolutely not. An access will not be permitted between Bethel Road and 403.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify.
And just to follow up, I believe we did meet with a couple of ministers over the years at different conferences to discuss that. So
I recall that.
It's not like we didn't go to bat on that issue, but we struck out. So, but it's a good question, and if it ever happens,
yep.
I think it'd be great. I think it had tremendous value. So.
Yeah, and as I said, I wanted to bring that through you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring that out of there because I know as council we've had discussions about that road before, so I wanted to clarify that for anybody that's listening.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Councilor Coleman.
Hey, Mr. Chair, through you to the agent. I'm still concerned on Councilor Bell's question about the overflow from the stormwater management. Will that be a closed ditch going there? Or are you planning on leaving that open?
Through Mr. Chair, I just want, let's not how do I word this? Let's not confuse overland flow with the typical day-to-day operation of the stormwater management pond, because the overland flow is only designed to accommodate the Hurricane Hazel storm, which is a 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 year storm, where there is a straight overland route where it's going to flow where hurricane level water will flow. We're trying to provide the channel through our property to pick up the county's pond overflow so that it gets to the outlet Bethel to the river. The day-to-day, I'll call it, operation of the stormwater management pond will match the rates of flow coming off the lands to that legal outlet at the ditch that currently exists.
Going? Good with that?
Fair enough.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee to the applicant? Okay, I don't see any hands up. Councillor Gower, I'm going to ask a couple questions here. Dave, that natural feature that we see on our maps that's in the middle, that's your intention is to remove that? Is that correct?
Yeah, Chair Miller, that's correct. That's the feature that I had mentioned that we've worked with the GRCA process, which also includes review by the county and M&R to first confirm it's not a significant feature. And then we work through the GRCA. They have criteria for consideration of removal of a feature, and they accepted our submission on the removal.
Okay, we'll have to trust them. Servicing, you said it's all these developments will be on municipal services, or that's the plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure of the timeline on that. We'll ask staff tonight, maybe. The trees, and I think you talked about this, that and Councilor Gabbard actually talked about it as well. Every indication that you plan to keep those trees there as buffers during the whole process and maybe even enhance it. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that was our idea. Was that we recognized the trees were there and we wanted to maintain them as part of a landscape buffer, and maybe enhance where there might be some gap if there's some trees that aren't in great condition. And I think the county understands that as well. And if there's discussion on road widening, I think we can take a look at how best to do that.
Okay, then my last question before I go to Councilor Gabbard was because she had her hand up, but I was going to ask if you've met with the neighbors, and you said you met with I think 5 Oaks already, and so yeah, I think something of this magnitude, yeah, a neighborhood meeting I think is always appreciated on our part. So thank you, Councilor Gabbard. You got it. Is there something I didn't raise that you want to raise? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I thought of, and they may have already covered this, through you to Mr. Ashton and Kayla, has anybody consulted with the ministry regarding the permitted industries that can locate around an OPP detachment? Because there's certain industries that aren't permitted.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Things like anything explosive like propane. I know, there was reasons why they didn't want to locate up near the existing fire station, because there's a propane industry up there that, can be potentially hazardous. And certainly this building is built to be tough, but has anybody consulted with the ministry?
Yep, no, that's good. Is there does the OPP preclude any industry from locating that you're aware
of? Through Mr. Chair, perhaps staff can respond. We haven't specifically spoken to the ministry. Just my comment would be, we are considering the existing residents along Potcher Road. They're obviously sensitive land uses. So that's why we're looking at, not locating kind of the heavy industrial, which, or propane related, those heavy uses in that location. So perhaps staff can confirm on discussions or contact, but I think with the approach we're taking on the zoning, it would work, but maybe staff can clarify on some of those other details on why OPP located there. And if that information is shared with us, we'll certainly make sure we look at the zoning appropriately.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if they were circulated on the application or not.
Let's ask our director of planning. Matt, is there anything you can share on that question?
It's actually a really great question, and something that we will look into, because it's not a question that has come up before. The OPP would have been circulated as they're an adjacent resident. We haven't had a comment back from them, but it is something we'll look into and make sure that we include in our report coming forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Yeah, that's a good question. If anybody on the OPP detachment committee knows that very well, so appreciate that, Councilor Goward. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so Dave, thank you. We're going to go to the public now. I'll ask our clerk, Adam, if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Yes, there are 3 members of the public here to speak to this application. We have Michael Schuberg, Dean Pottruff, and Ronald Pottruff.
Dean and Ronald. Okay, so are we going in that order then? Mike, do you want to go first? Is that okay? Michael?
Hi. Yeah, it's okay with me. Hi, I'm Michael Schuberg. I'm the executive director at Five Oaks Center. We're directly southeast of this proposed development. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Kayla, who's been fielding all of our questions and being an amazing county staff person. So thank you so much for all of your attention. We've really appreciated it. We raised a number of concerns and we do feel that we're getting some progress. I haven't had a chance yet to meet with Dave, but we did meet with Stan yesterday, the hydrogeologist, which surrounds our biggest concern for this development, which is protecting the ground source water system. Five Oaks has a really unique water system. We don't actually have a well. We collect ground source water in a complicated system that's over 65 years old. Just a reminder, Five Oaks will celebrate its 70th anniversary. So we were there before the 403 and any of this was ever dreamt of. So our water system, noted by Stan, likely would be directly impacted by this development and likely would need to be monitored and addressed. So we want to make sure that that is noted. It was not noted in his hydrogeologist report. I'll have to say that I'm definitely outside of my area of expertise in this conversation as well. That was an overlook for sure in that report, which was submitted in August 2020. It will need to be updated and to include the Five Oaks drinking water system. So we're definitely very concerned about that. There will be further conversations needed in that area. We're also concerned about the stormwater runoff. My understanding is that basically every drop of water that hits the ground from the Brant 403 Park, Rest Acres Road, and this new development makes its way eventually to the confluence of the Grand River and White Man's Creek, which is Five Oaks property. We steward that property. And so we want to make sure that in these 100-year storms, which seem to be happening more often than 100 years these days, that we can protect endangered species that are on the property, protect the creek, which does run through. So we're talking about a ditch, along the north side of Bethel Road, which I actually don't think there is a ditch in front of Dean's house, but Dean can speak to that, Mr. Dean Pottruff. And then it does go under the road of Bethel and then directly through the property and directly past our drinking water area. We are concerned about, sodium in the parking lots, increased chemicals that could be used in the production of, in this industrial park. What happens if there's a spill, and it damages, these precarious drinking water systems. So we're in no means opposed to this development. We obviously know that development is good for everybody and it's good for Brant County, and we want to be a good team player for Brant County. We generate 1,500 guests a month in a normal year. We're awesome not-for-profit doing pretty good things, we think, for the county. We are concerned about the tree line. Part of coming to Five Oaks is coming to a natural setting. So, driving past a whole bunch of Adidas looking buildings isn't quite in line with going on a retreat. So if we can maintain that sort of natural setting, that would be great. We are concerned, and maybe the developer knows the answer to this, but a lot of gravel trucks use that existing haul road to exit from the gravel pits directly adjacent to this development. If that road is removed, my understanding is they will all go up Pottruff to Bethel and then along past the police station and then up Rest Acres Road. So this is going to increase, a lot of semi trucks. We're going to have a lot of people walking on lunch breaks. We have retreatants from Five Oaks walking on these roads without sidewalks. So how are we going to keep all of these extra people safe walking around out there? So we definitely want to draw to the attention that gravel trucks will now be coming directly to that stop sign, whereas they currently go up that haul road, it's not an abandoned road. It's used every day by trucks going out to Rest Acres Road, making a right-hand turn and heading out where they're going. So, yeah, so I think that really raises the concerns that we have. We're happy to meet and have Five Oaks would even be willing to host a town hall meeting if it's permitted during COVID to do so. Be a great spot for to gather the neighbors together with these developers. So thank you for your attention to this, and we're happy to stay connected and informed.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm going to get to your questions in a second because most of what you're at or talked about was the need for further information, and we don't have that today. But just hold on. We're going to hear from Dean and Ronald, and then we'll go to Mr. Aston, because there's a couple questions I think he could talk about tonight that we haven't heard. So, thank you, Dean. Can you? I'll get you up next to speak if you're available.
Hello. Good evening. You hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Dean. Yeah.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns, and I'd just like to echo Michael's what he brought up. And again, as Michael said, I'd like to thank Kayla for all her responding to our emails and our concerns and our questions. The flow of information has been really good, and communication has been really good, which we really appreciate. So thank you very much. My concerns here, I live at the corner of the northeast corner of Bethel and Potchefstroom Road, approximately 10 acres of land. I'm concerned about obviously the source water protection for my well. My well is actually in the original well for my house. It's been running since 1961. It's in good working order, and it's located in the wetlands down behind my house, which is on the map there. And it's a shallow well, and I'm concerned about possible permeation from groundwater flow of any contaminants and these sorts of things. So like Michael said, with the stormwater management system and trying to wrap my head around exactly what all it entails as far as what subdivisions are involved and the future subdivisions that are involved. And it just feels like it's all funneling down into the corner here to the retention pond. And the overflow from that retention pond, I guess, from what I understand, is going to be coming through the frontage of our property along the road allowance, which I'm not really fond of an open ditch, but I guess that's another discussion. So I'm concerned about the protection of our well is my main concern. And I did meet with Five Oaks yesterday and Stan as well. And in his report, my well is mentioned, about it might be being affected. And so obviously we have great concerns in regards to that. And as well, we talk about the 100-year storms, but with this climate change and unknown what direction are we going in, like, really, are we talking about 100-year storms anymore? You look at risk for fires and the contaminants, possible contaminants from the industrial subdivision. How does that get trapped in a retention pond and the possible seepage out of those retention ponds? And again, it's not that far from my well source, so it is a concern. And as Michael said, the ongoing, it is getting busy around here. I'm not by any means opposed to an industrial subdivision. Like Michael said, I want to support county initiatives, bringing jobs to our community. I believe in that, and I think it's a good thing. But as long as we do our due diligence and make sure drinking water is protected, and as far as other pollutions like noise pollution and proper lighting and traffic concerns are spoken to, then I think we're off to a good start. So I am looking forward to future meetings and meeting with Dave, as you know, on behalf of the applicant, and sitting down and maybe hammering out some of these issues we have. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And yeah, we got, if there's anything the applicant can address tonight, we will. Otherwise, yeah, some of it looks like it's going to be, you know, further down the road, and we're going to keep you guys involved. Okay, so we'll go to Ronald, and I should point out, thank you for pointing out where you reside, and for Michael identifying that he's with the Five Oaks. We'll get Ronald up, just and if he could give us his address as well for the clerk. So, and then any comments you want to, or questions you want to bring up, Ronald, go ahead. And you have to take yourself off of mute.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Just
Ronald, what's your address there?
169 Potter's Road. It's
okay. Yeah, you're right on.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, my son Dean just presented just before me, and that was part of our original farm, along with Five Oaks. And I do remember the Hurricane Hazel back in a few years ago, and there was quite a devastating water rush of, deluge of water coming down through Five Oaks, and did a lot of damage to the Bethel Road, where it went underneath the road and washed it out. And down around the old dining hall, where through that period, it flooded around there. I remember it being about 1.5 feet deep. You couldn't get near the dining hall, but and that's where their water supply is. So nothing's impossible, I guess, with the way storms are going and things today. We don't know what's coming, of course, but that is one of my concerns, is the major runoff. And I know it ultimately ends up in Whiteman's Creek, and I was wondering whether they ever explored the possibility of running the ditch or sewer line, like not a sewer line, but the storm line going south on the east side of Potter's Road to Whiteman's Creek. That's an alternative. And so that would bypass Dean's property and Five Oaks, where there's no housing or anything that would, there's some wetlands down through there too, but it's not affecting anybody's water systems. Or maybe Michael could speak to that more, but that was one of my concerns, is that. And I was just wondering if that could be an alternative system or direction for it to get to Whiteman's Creek. And I guess my own feelings, I've been here over 60 years, and like I said, Five Oaks is where I was born and lived till I moved up here on Potter's Road. And we have I have a drilled well, but it's it's kind of worry about, it's excellent water, and that's kind of a major thing today with any properties. And also I have the other concerns too, with the general pollution, the noise and so on, where it's pretty quiet around here, mostly other than the gravel trucks going up the road that they use now. But there's very rarely one goes by my house. Maybe wouldn't be 4 or 5 a week probably, but if they're going to be going every day and up Bethel Road, that isn't what that road was designed for. And before, it was going up like what they do now, just up to and entering onto Rest Acres Road, and it seems to be working pretty good. But anyhow, I was just voicing my concerns, and that was like I say, not against the, but it's just make sure everything is like to be kept up to date as well on what's going on and see the done right. And that overflow I'm more concerned about it coming onto our property. There's nowhere for it to go. If it does come across there, it's going to pool, and I can't see having an open ditch. You're getting more mosquitoes and everything else, and settled water. Like, I don't know if it's going underground. That's one thing in a underground, in a storm sewer or something, but covered over. But my suggestion was, could it be going the other direction? You'd have to maybe speak to Michael on that respect too, but it would stop the interference with their water system, and that is just my feeling. So that's just about all I got to say, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. Before we kind of address some of your concerns tonight, and I think you guys all know we're not going to address them all tonight, but we're going to go and see if there's anybody else from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask Adam, is anyone else on the line tonight, Adam?
Mr. Chair, no, there was just the 3 members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, but I will ask a second time if there's anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And Dean, did you want to, or you just, okay, looks like.
No, I'm good.
Okay,
No.
So I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public. Then I will ask our applicant, Dave, if he could come forward. I know some of these questions, they're ongoing. We know we don't have all the answers tonight, but there was a couple I thought maybe you could touch on. Obviously, all the members of the public tonight, Five Oaks and the Patras are concerned about their drinking water. So I guess the question is, how do we make sure that their drinking water is good? There was talk about sodium. Obviously we're putting more salt on those roads, potential spills. How do we make sure that doesn't happen? And then there was a question about truck roads. I guess the traffic is to go out Bethel. Is that correct? And what else do we have? And then there was a question, and maybe you don't know this tonight. The question of, and I seen that in one of the letters, a question about a storm line directly to Whiteman. So, can you help us out with those, and just let us know which ones you can't help us out with? So I know it's a bit of a list, but I hope you guys
through Mr. Chair, that's what I wrote down as well, and I think some I can, I don't know if I have the answers tonight, but there's some that we can help out. I know when we talk about the stormwater management pond, and what I'm going to suggest is that I'll work with Kayla, and if we can get the contact information for Michael and Dean and Ronald, we'll set up kind of maybe we can just do it out on site if we're outside, or we'll try and find a way to get out on site and better explain the stormwater management system and how it's designed to function, because I think that will help. With regard to the system, there will be built into the design requirements for oil and grit separation and treatment through the design of the pond through a forebay, and then how the clean water being outletted from the pond to the receiving ditch or whatever the case may be in the final design. So there is treatment built into the pond. The pond we're showing is designed for the subject lands. There's not other external lands that are draining to this pond. Other lands may require their own pond or a separate solution. But that was one thing I just wanted to clarify. In the comments we received from the county, there are comments related to the need as a condition of approval to create a spill risk management plan So the developer has to prepare what happens if something occurs and make sure there's a plan in place. And there's also requirements associated with monitoring private wells, kind of a getting a baseline and then monitoring private wells. Although we do recognize that the Five Oaks is a kind of more of a unique situation than a private well. So we'll have discussions with them on that. The truck traffic associated with the existing haul road, that's a good question, and I think what I'll talk with TCA about, and maybe it's something we can work with the county on, is how do we make sure we can phase the construction and development so that the truck traffic can utilize that haul road or any of the existing roads in the subdivision as a means, rather than directing them to Bethel and Pot Roof. We understand the concern there, so we'll do our best to try and make sure there's kind of a phase solution associated with that. I think I got your questions, but like I said, we'll reach out, and if it's a Zoom call with Michael and Dean or Ronald all together or separate, we're happy to do that. We're even happy to. I think if we met on site and followed protocols, we might be able to do that outside as well, if we're permitted to do so. But we will be in touch and certainly have a discussion with them.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And going forward, their contact information. What the plan, we will have it. The planner will have it because they've emailed her as well. So
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I'm going to ask the committee if I can get a motion to receive this as information. Moved by Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Bell. Are there any further comments or questions? Okay. See, I have one for the planner. Not a fair question. I don't see Mr. Walton here tonight. We're looking at servicing. Do we have a timeline for that? I have no idea.
So through the chair to Councillor Miller, I understand that the Paris Master Servicing Plan is underway. That's an important factor into getting these lands serviced. So we have been in discussions quite often with our operations team, Rob Walton and his group, to sort of talk about servicing, but it is my understanding that this servicing is still somewhat, down in the future. So we will just be continuing to work with MHPC on that, but servicing is some time away at this point.
Okay, and I guess that brings me to my next concern, because I think you said what I knew you were going to say, is we're a little bit of ways away. And tonight we're receiving this for information. Is this going to show up on a future planning committee's table or agenda 5 years from now, asking for a decision, or do you think we'll see more in the future before that happens?
Through the chair, I do understand. I see Dave smiling. I know that the intent is to have a recommendation report before council summer, fall of this year. So we are trying to work with their timelines, and we do know that some of the servicing constraints can be addressed through draft plan conditions. So that's how we will work together to make sure that this can happen appropriately.
Okay, I guess that does make sense. Councillor Galward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could it be addressed through draft plan servicing that if we impacted any of those 3 immediate neighbors, that they could at no charge hook up to the municipal water system?
Kayla? I think that could be accommodated.
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward, that is a bit of an unusual request, so something that I'm happy to look into. We can definitely take that point and come back with some options when we bring the recommendation report forward.
Matt,
Yeah,
you
thank you, because certainly Five Oaks being a nonprofit organization and two neighboring homeowners through no fault of their own, if their water's impacted and all of a sudden they have to buy water, I mean, that's not a good solution for long-term, especially somebody that has serving the public with guests every month. We would have to do something fairly quickly to remedy the situation, and that's why I'm asking that question. So thank you for looking into that in the future.
Matt, did you want to weigh in on that question?
No, I don't have any further things to add. I imagine there would be some pretty significant cost implications for council to consider, but it's something we could look into and get back with.
Okay, something to think about anyways. Okay, appreciate that, Councillor Goward. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Any further discussions or questions? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of receiving? Opposed? So to the members of the public, again, keep involved. I'm going to ask our planner and the applicant to make sure that's done. And I appreciate you meeting with them on site. And yeah, we'll look forward to see what comes out of that one. Okay, let me just
have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Let me just go to my agenda here. And so this will bring us up to item 7.4, which is report 2199 ZBA 13-21, Granite Shore Homes, 440 Highway 24. And Kayla, that's you again. So if you want to go ahead and do your presentation. And you're already up. Good job. Okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So this is an application for a zoning amendment for lands located at 440 Highway 24. And the presentation is for information only tonight. The subject lands are located at 440 Highway 24 and are proposing an addition to an existing accessory building. The applicant is seeking relief of 520 square meters from the maximum permitted lot area of 200 square meters to permit an addition onto an existing accessory building. So the total area of this accessory building would be 520 square meters. The designation of these lands is agricultural, and the agricultural designation does contemplate for limited residential uses, and accessory structures are permitted as accessory to a primary residential use. The zoning of the lands is agricultural. Single detached dwelling is permitted along with the accessory building. And it's section 4.4 where relief is needed for the addition to the existing accessory building. And it's staff's understanding that the applicant does have a significant car collection and recreational vehicles, which will be stored in the space. In terms of next steps, we are circulating the application to internal and external agencies. Planning staff will prepare a recommendation report and bring it back to council at a later date. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Are there any questions for the planner on this one from the committee? Okay, see none. I will ask if there is an applicant, and I guess Rob, you're going to speak to this.
I am, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
The sole purpose of this application is to modify the agricultural zone as it applies specifically to 440 Highway 24 to allow the expansion of an existing lawfully established non-conforming accessory structure beyond what is currently permitted. And I mentioned that it's lawfully established because it was established under the previous bylaw and in fact did comply with the previous bylaw. The subject property is a well-treed 3.4 hectare parcel land upon which is located a single detached dwelling, and an existing 410 square meter accessory building, which is currently used for the storage of boats, skidoos, bicycles, other toys, presumably in a shop. And the proposed addition of 305 square meters is for the storage and maintenance of a personal car collection. As noted by Kayla, it is a significant parcel of land situated on Highway 24, and certainly the existing structure, and I provided photos of the existing structure from the road using Google. And I think you can see the top of the roof, and clearly if you're driving the normal 100 kilometers an hour on Highway 24 around that curve, you shouldn't be rubbernecking to your right anyways. But so the existing structure is barely visible from the municipal road. As noted by Kayla, the current zoning is agricultural, which allows an accessory building to have 200 square meters or 15% lot coverage. The expanded accessory building will in fact be 2% lot coverage, exceed obviously the 200 square meters, but it'll only have a lot coverage of 2%. We have provided the municipality with a site plan, interior plans, elevation plans of the proposed structure, and it certainly illustrates not only that it will not impact the neighboring properties, but the traveling public. I know Kayla expressed a concern that ultimately it would be used for commercial purposes. And I responded to Kayla's concerns basically by stating that the zoning bylaw could be structured in such a fashion that it would be an accessory structure to an existing residential lot. And clearly, if it was used for something other than accessory structure, it would have to come before council for rezoning, probably official plan amendment, but certainly that is not the intent of the addition. Mr. Chair and members, I can respond to questions.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Are there any questions for the applicant's agent from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I will ask our clerk if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application.
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here tonight to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you. I will ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll bring it back to committee and ask if I can get a motion to receive as information. Moved by Councillor Wheat, second by Councillor Pierce. Are there any comments or questions on this one? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Hey, Rob, you know how it works at this point. It'll go back to Kayla. She'll do a little fine tuning with it. And then at some point, we expect to see it before this committee for a decision. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so that completes section 7 of our meeting tonight. And those were the 4 hearings to receive information from the public. We're going to go to section 8. Noting that there are 3 applications before us for a decision. And the first one is 8.1, and this is report -2165 ZBA 0721 concerning Steel Wheel Brewery located at 105 Powerline Road. And I'll ask our planner, Dan to come forward and present. And Dan, I can see the presentation, but I cannot hear you.
Sorry, just got to get myself all sorted here. I will start my video. I'll just turn that to full screen so you can see. So this is an application for property located at 105 Powerline Road, where the existing Steel Wheel microbrewery is located. This application, as I mentioned, is a zoning bylaw amendment for the Steel Wheel Brewery, and planning staff are recommending approval of this application. So this particular application is a minor rezoning with modifications that are in keeping with the use that is already permitted. So this is coming straight to recommendation. There was no information meeting related to this application. So in terms of the existing conditions, the subject lands are designated as an agricultural land use. The zoning does have a site-specific provision on there that does specifically recognize the microbrewery use, limiting the size to 155 square meters and limiting a number of provisions, which I will walk you through in a little bit greater detail on the next slide. So the subject lands there, the total area is 5.6 hectares or approximately 13.8 acres. The area that's identified in red on the screen is the area that currently permits the microbrewery use, and this is an area of approximately 0.24 hectares or 5.9 acres. So just to walk you through what's being requested as part of this application. So the application serves kind of a dual purpose. One is to bring this microbrewery use more in a way that's more in keeping with the current definition of microbrewery in our zoning bylaw. When this application first came forward back in 2017, the microbrewery use was something new, and we have since developed some standards related to the use, as we've seen some other related uses come up through the county, with the example of Flux Brewery. So the site-specific provisions are, or like I said, were developed prior to the definition of microbrewery as we have it in our zoning. So this chart identifies three columns. One is what the existing zoning permits. The middle column is what the microbrewery definition permits, and the column on the right is what the application is requesting. So we can see that the microbrewery is limited today to 155 square meters. The microbrewery definition permits 300 square meters, and the maximum floor area being requested is 400 square meters. And this is to accommodate a future addition. It's to accommodate the food truck portion that is being requested as part of this application, as well as a modified shipping container. So when that area was calculated originally for the gross floor area up to 155 square meters, it only included the area dedicated to the brewing process. The microbrewery definition, the way we apply it today, includes the accessory uses that are permitted as part of the microbrewery use, like the patio, support office, tasting area, and retail component, and restaurant component. So that's why it seems like it's a big jump, but the way we apply that area calculation is much different. So just moving along, you can see that the existing zoning does not permit the restaurant or food production, and it does not permit entertainment performances out on the outdoor patio. You'll see that the current definition does permit a retail component with the restaurant component, and that outdoor entertainment component is certainly something that is accessory to microbrewery uses, as well as any type of restaurant use. So we are looking to, or the applicants are looking to permit that type of performance on the property associated with the use. So as part of the proposal, they are looking to permit the restaurant portion as well as the outdoor entertainment. The original application required a planting strip to be planted along the shared property line between 105 and 107 Powerline Road. This came as a result of some concerns raised by the current owners. And that planting strip has been installed, is in place, and it's growing. And we are leaving that provision in the zoning bylaw because we feel that it is it's important to maintain, have that planting strip maintained to increase the buffering between the uses. As part of this application, the applicants are also looking to permit a modified shipping container, which is to be used accessory to the microbrewery use. This is similar to what we've seen with the Paris Brewery here in Paris at the Wincy Mill. The shipping container is permitted on the property as it is an agricultural use, so they are permitted one shipping container. However, that shipping container is intended to be used for storage. The modified shipping container will serve, again, dual purpose. One is for storage during the off season, the winter months. And when the weather permits, they will use this shipping container as an accessory structure for the brewery, whether it's to serve out in their beer garden area or to allow for some additional seating kind of outside of the elements. The application is also, the applicants have plans to, or are considering plans to propose a building addition to the tasting room. So this would be to the white existing farmhouse kind of structure there that's on the property. And the existing structure currently has a deficient setback or a legal non-conforming setback. So if they propose a building addition onto that existing structure, we would have to then recognize that existing deficient setback. So now is our opportunity to do that. So we have included it as part of the request for this application. Just for the benefit of the committee, I've included an additional photo here. This is the landscape buffer. So you don't have this picture in your package, but I've included it here kind of to see the state of that landscape buffer. And here, this is kind of the behind the tasting room brewery area. And you can see just past the propane tank there, you can see that the shipping container is in place and a building permit was obtained to place that structure there, and final inspections are pending. So based on review of the application, these modifications that are requested are as part of this application will allow for the microbrewery use to plan and accommodate for minor growth and offer amenities such as food and entertainment to complement the existing business in the rural setting. These modifications requested are in keeping with the intent of a microbrewery use and on-farm diversified use as outlined and defined in the zoning bylaw. The application is consistent with the policies of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement. The application is in conformity with the general intent of the policies of the official plan and the intent of the zoning bylaw. So it is my professional opinion that the request is appropriate and represents good planning, and therefore recommend that this application be approved. I will make mention that letters of concern were received from those abutting neighbors at 107 power line, and those are included in the addendum. Also included in the addendum is the response from Steel Wheel, and the owners of Steel Wheel, Cindy and Harold, are here to speak this evening, so they'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Are there any questions for Dan at this time? No, Dan, I'll get, there we go. Thank you. Okay, I see Councilor Gavin, you got your hand raised, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan, could you please bring up a picture again of the screening buffer that you showed briefly? I didn't really catch it. I'd like to see it again because it was mentioned in the neighbor's letter. Have you got a mouse that you can point it out? Is that the yellow?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but you can see the public notice sign by the hydro pole.
Right.
And you can see the existing house in behind that hydro pole, and then you can see a bit of some cedars planted along the fence line here. So over time, those will grow into something a little bit more significant.
Well, there's a whole bunch that don't look green to me. If they're cedars, they look like they're dead. Are they?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Is there any possibility we can get that full screen?
Yeah, can you, okay, well, if you can, I don't know if you can or not.
Also, we do have these in our packages, just out of that point of order. We can actually zoom in ourselves and look at different items.
This particular image through Mr. Chair is not included in the package. I threw that in last minute just for some
perspective. We can get it, correct? So that we can do it ourselves at our own pace on our own screens?
Absolutely.
Are they dead though? Can you answer that, please?
Perhaps it's best to leave that one to the property owners.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll ask the applicant.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Dan, I'll get you to stop sharing the screen because I can't see anything. That's one of the drawbacks of these Zoom meetings. Is there anyone else that has a question for the planner at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask if the applicants are here tonight or agent thereof to speak to their application.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead. You want to give your name or address and for the clerk, and then go ahead with your presentation.
Sure. Good evening, Chair Miller and members of the Planning and Development Committee. We're Cindy and Harold from Steel Wheel Brewery at 105 Powerline Road in Brant County, Ontario. Okay. And we own this business that you're listening to tonight. So we are hop farmers, and we use hops and fruit we grow in the beer that we brew, and have done so since we've opened our doors in 2018. We are a popular craft brewery, as you can see by the statistics that you have in your packages. With over 13,000 visits in 2019, it's easy to see the positive impact our brewery has on the County of Brant. We do want to acknowledge that comments have been submitted from our closest neighbors, and we do hope that you found the response that we submitted helpful. During our journey from opening to now, we've had outstanding customer service from the County of Brant, including the planning, building, and economic development departments. And we especially want to thank the planning department for the resources that they've dedicated in the preparation of this application. As with all small businesses, it's been a tough time for us with the COVID lockdown restrictions, and our situation was compounded in 2020 with the closure of our road for bridge repair that took over 9 months. Which was 4 months longer than predicted. Despite all this, we managed to keep our business afloat. As we look forward to better days ahead, we're asking for a minor amendment to the bylaw to allow us the ability to provide the experiences people expect when visiting a brewery and ensure that they have good times in Brant. That concludes our presentation. We hope you agree with the planner's recommendation for approval, and that's all we have to say right now.
Okay, thank you guys. I'm going to ask the committee members if they have any questions for the applicants. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Wheat.
Thank you to the applicants, Cindy and Harold. I'll be supporting your application. It's just a thought. I like the fact that you're going to have food, because food goes together with alcohol. I hope, though, that your food is going to be prepared by yourselves or an employee and not a food trailer, because I'm not in love with food trailers. Specifically, I spoke against it down there on Oakland Road, and that's going to be coming forward. We have so many restaurants in this municipality that are struggling through the COVID. I just don't want to see another, preparing yourself is great, but I just don't want to see a food trailer there, please.
Is that a question or more of a comment?
It's a comment.
Okay.
Comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cindy or Harold want to say, sorry, John, but we're going to have a food trailer. Then I'll I'll make it a question. Are you having a food trailer?
Is it a food trailer or is it a restaurant?
Through the chair, we're not planning on having a permanent restaurant here. Because we are only open a few days of the week, a restaurant presents a whole new set of challenges to our business. We don't want to have a food truck here all the time. We will on occasion have a food truck. We would like to have the opportunity to partner with local businesses as we've done in the past. We've had Dronkowski's Deli serve here, and we'd like to open it up and then give service groups, Lions clubs, things of that nature, the opportunity to come out on a Saturday afternoon and serve food for a while. The food will not be all day, every day. It will be more of an event kind of a thing.
Thank you, Dave. I like what you just said. Local businesses coming up periodically, not a permanent food truck sitting there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll be supporting.
Okay, thank you, John. We'll go to Councilor Goward and then Councilor McAlpine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of my questions was already answered because I wanted to know how many seats would be in the restaurant, but there won't be a restaurant. It'll be a food truck with outdoor seating. Is that correct? And the seating will be the same seating that you use for the patio for the brewery. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And the other question, you want to allow outdoor performances. Are you talking about just music through a tape or a disc jockey, or are you talking about live bands?
So through the chair, we would like to have a mixture. So at times we would like to be able to have some low volume background music playing. On occasion, we have what are called more major events. We have a hop harvest party that we've had in the past where we had gone through the getting declared municipally significant, and we had a ticketed event where we had a band playing, and we had food service provided by, again, Dronkowski's Deli. So we are not talking about having live concerts and things of that. Another option that we had was perhaps a charity dinner in the hop yard. The hop yard is very beautiful in August with 18-foot hop plants. We thought of putting a table out there and perhaps having a wandering minstrel and $100 a plate type dinners, proceeds going to charity. So things of that nature.
I see. So no rock band, no loud music to disturb your neighbors.
That's correct.
That's
and
correct.
Our normal operating hours, we close at 9 p.m. And by that time of the day, it's time to wind it down. So we are not planning on things that go late into the evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Goward, did you get your question answered about the trees? You asked the planner.
Oh, thank you for reminding me, Chair Miller. The cedar trees that are planted there, are some of them dead? They look brown or yellow in the picture.
Yeah, through the chair. So every year, some trees survive the winter better than other trees. So some do look bushier than others. I wouldn't say any of the trees in the pictures are dead, but we scan this planting strip every year and replace the trees that need to be replaced.
That's great. And is it just a single line or is it a double line of trees?
It's a single line that we've started to infill with a double line because we recognize that the single line takes a bit to fill in. So we've added some smaller cedars between the larger cedars. We've added some dogwoods in front. So we have tried to enhance the planting strip to make it more opaque.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilor McAlpine, you're next.
My questions were partially answered, I guess, by what you said, and I'm support of what you're doing and what you've been doing. I'm impressed with the quality of the location and everything. My other question, though, maybe more to Dan, just to sort of alleviate some maybe the concerns of the neighbors. Is there bylaws that would prevent, say, the operation of the current brewery, say after 10 or something like that?
Well, we're asking questions of the applicant at this time, so just hold on to that question, Councillor McAlpine. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I'm pleased with what they've said, so.
Okay, we'll get to you. I'm not ignoring you. We'll get to you, but any questions for the applicant while they're before? That's all. Councillor Ferrier.
Yeah, thank you. I guess just two questions for the applicant. One is, are there any other plans to sort of appease the concerns of the neighbor that aren't on this file? Like we just got some new information at this meeting, but do you have anything else that you'd like to state on the record? Because they won't be able to question back and forth. So I'd like to ask the question for them, and then I have a follow-up if that's okay.
Planning on doing anything different as far as extending our hours late into the evening, opening up more days of the week, things of that nature? I'm just not sure what other things they would be looking for.
Okay, well, thank you. And I guess my other, I'll try to find a way to word it as a question, but I find that a lot of these conflicts sometimes occur because of the expectations that get set. So maybe it's more, I would advise when discussing these things, you know, a lot of things with business, especially during COVID, aren't planned on, right? So, you know, you were asked questions earlier about what type of music and will there be rock and roll? And while you're not planning on doing so, there could be a great event that comes up 2 years from now that involves, you know, rock and roll music, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like being open to not lowering the expectations of neighbors can sometimes go a long way for it not getting to bylaw and not getting to us as council members. But I'm just wondering, maybe I'll ask the question in this way, as that is sort of pretext. What are are there any other plans for expansion of anything other than this? Because these plans weren't planned 6 years ago either, right? So are there any other things that maybe, you know, to be forewarned?
Through the chair, we have no plans for expansion, and that even goes with the variance for the setback that we're asking for. Right now, we have seating capacity in 2 areas for indoor seating. One is in our tasting room, and the other one is in our manufacturing facility. We call it the brew house. So right now, every Friday afternoon, we have to remove all of the brewery equipment from an area and set up tables. With COVID now, we have barriers and things like that we have to set up as well. Then on Monday morning, we remove all of that and we turn it back into the production facility. Our proposal is, or our idea with the addition is to shift that seating out of the brewery and into its own dedicated area, which alleviates a lot of work for us and gives us a little bit more security by not having people in our brewery area. Even though we do offer table service both inside and out, so we constantly have staff circulating in there. We have video surveillance inside and out, so we have keep a close watch on what people are doing. But a brewery itself is kin to a manufacturing area. We have tanks that, you know, if somebody decided to open a valve, it would dump a lot of beer on the floor, and it's not an ideal situation. It's what we have right now, and it works. So that's getting back to your question. We don't have any other plans for expansion. We are small. We are a destination brewery. We want people to come here. We are not manufacturing beer and having truckloads of it go out to the LCBO. We don't deliver kegs to restaurants, things like that. We are on a septic and a well, and we are of a comfortable size, and that's the way we want to maintain. So the changes we're asking for are more to enhance the experience of the people that come to visit us.
Thank you for answering my question, and thank you for what you're doing. Also, congratulations on surviving a very difficult year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other committee members have a question for the applicant? Okay, see, none, I got a couple questions. What's the difference between a nano and a microbrewery? Is that a legal definition or just
So through the chair, a nano brewery is not a legal definition. So a nano brewery makes up to about 3,000 hectoliters of beer a year. And a microbrewery can make up to, as far as taxation goes, 180,000 hectoliters of beer a year. We are under 3,000 hectoliters a year, so we still consider ourselves a nano brewery, but the official term for what we are is a microbrewery.
Can you talk about parking?
Yes, through the chair. We, when we first opened, we had gone through the site plan review and had what we thought were the appropriate number of parking spots. Inevitably, people all tend to show up at the same time. We have seating capacity for 80 people indoors, and it never fails that, you know, you're sitting here 1 minute wondering if anybody's going to show up, and then typically 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon, everybody rolls in at the same time and they're gone before dinner, and we're sitting here in the evening wondering whether we should be open till 9 o'clock. So we have put in a overflow gravel parking lot that seems to suit the situation well. In addition to that, in the summer, we have hay fields that if we do have an event, that we can have parking in the hay fields. We don't have parking on the road. The first year we opened, we had a situation in the spring where frost was coming out of the ground and it got very mucky on a Saturday, and we did have we had to close our personal driveway to our residence where overflow parking would be, and people did park on the road for 1 day.
Okay, so just to be clear, then the street parking is a thing of the past.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. See no other questions from committee members. I will ask our clerk if there's anybody from the public that wishes to address this application.
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I will ask a second time if there's any member from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's any member from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll bring this, I'll close this off to the public. And at this point, we've heard from the applicant. No members from the public, and I want to go back to Councillor McAlpine because you had a question for staff, John, on this one. So go ahead and ask that one about the 10 p.m. or time.
Yeah, I was just wondering if bylaw has time limits when operation for the breweries and these type of operations.
Sorry, Dan, can you help us out?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else is getting a little bit of crackling feedback, or if it's just me.
Yeah, I think it may be from Councillor Wheat's computer. There might be some interference.
So to answer the question, so our bylaw, I just looked it up real quickly, kind of benefits of being at home with a computer. It's kind of 2 categories to the response in terms of a bylaw complaint and the hours of operation. People noise would be related to yelling, shouting, things like that, and that's typically like 11 o'clock midnight through to 7 a.m. If you had any entertainment like something, live entertainment or something played through tape, again, that would be similar hours, 11 through 7 a.m. of silent time. And if there were any complaints at all, bylaw would be the appropriate route to go. And to my knowledge, we haven't had any bylaw complaints related to operations of the site that haven't been dealt with as a response. In terms of the hours of operation, again, I'm not sure, Cindy or Harold, if your liquor license restricts the hours of serving the beverage.
Yes, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission is who decides what the serving hours are, and those have been changing throughout COVID. So sometimes it's till 11 or midnight pre-COVID, and sometimes now in the midst of COVID, when we were open, we could pour till 9 o'clock. So it keeps fluctuating, but it is governed by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission.
Councilor McAlpine, is that?
Yeah, no, that's appreciated. That's what I thought. So thanks very much.
Okay, I got a question for Dan. Right now, this microbrewery has a site plan, correct?
That is correct. Through Mr. Chair, we did apply a site plan application back in 2016 to establish what exists today.
Will that be altered given this? Is there any changes that need to be done to the site plan?
Through Mr. Chair, as resulting from this application, we will not be required any immediate changes. When we will review the proposed building addition at the time that the applicants wish to propose it, and we will look to make sure that grading, parking is accommodated, loading, things like that. So making sure that we do amend that existing site plan agreement that we have on file.
Okay, that would be appreciated. I think there's some legitimate concerns from the neighbors, so if they could be addressed through site plan, that would be appreciated. No other, well, right now, I guess we'll see if we can get this on the floor. Is there somebody that wishes to move this application for approval? Moved by Councillor Wheat, second by Mayor Bailey. Any other questions, discussions, or comments on this application? Okay, I won't belabor the point. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that one is carried. And to our applicants, Cindy and Harold, just keep in mind that this will be going forward to council at the end of this month for final approval. Councillor Wheat, you wish to add something? And keep in mind you're on mute. John, you're on mute. You are on mute.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just need to note that I had to mute Councillor Wheat's mic just because of the interference that was going on.
And it did fix it, Adam. So
Gary's trying to give him a call. So if you answer your phone, Councillor Wheat, he'll walk you through what you need to do, okay?
Okay. John, we'll get... All right. I see a hand come. Okay. We will, we still got quorum, but okay, we'll see if we can't get him back, but it did fix it, so. Okay, moving forward, always forward, we are going to 8.2, and this is report 21-72 ZBA 0621. And this is 11-8-11 Elevate Properties Inc., 482 Birch Road, and this is Amanda. So Amanda, if you want to go ahead and present, and we will listen attentively. Go ahead.
There we go. Just had to unmute myself. Thank you through the chair. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the subject lands from suburban residential to holding suburban residential. This rezoning would be consistent with the rear of the subject lands. This holding provision is intended to prevent premature development until water capacity is available. And then in terms of the County of Brant official plan, the subject lands are designated as suburban residential, which contemplates 4 residential uses. And then in regards to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned residential, and the applicant is proposing to place a holding on this portion as a condition of severance approval. Once capacity is available, the applicant will be required to lift the holding provision at the time they intend to develop. And then I am recommending approval of this application, and I can answer any questions the committee members may have. Thank you.
All right, Amanda. That was quick but straightforward. Is there any questions for our planner Amanda on this application from the committee? And I'll go to Councillor Pierce and then Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Amanda. Just a quick question with the property that's on the back of this. Does that, I'm wondering what's going to happen with that if the time comes where they do look to develop this. It's almost like it'll be landlocked because it's not, where they're proposing this is not taking into consideration the property that runs across the back of that. Is that the same parcel of land, or I'm just curious what's going to happen with that if it will become landlocked?
Yes, thank you through the chair. So the back portion of the property, that rectangular shape, that is part of the same parcel. Just the way the zoning was right now, that back half or that rectangular shape already had that holding provision on it. And so Perfect. We're just looking to add the holding to the front to make it consistent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Goward, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Amanda. My question is similar to Councillor Pierce. His question, is there a concept plan, Amanda, for the back portion of these lands for future development? And where would the road be to come off Birch Road?
Thank you through the chair. So during the pre-consultation meeting, the applicant did submit a concept plan to show how the lands could be developed. When they do intend on developing the property, they would need to apply to lift the holding, and they would also need to apply to lift the holding, and then at the time of development, any proposal would need to meet the current zoning standards.
And would you be looking at if there's a plan of subdivision for those lands in the rear or whatever, road widening and possibility of, there's no sidewalks along this section of Birch Road, and the children walk to school along here, and in the winter, the only place to walk is on the road, unless they're far enough away to be bused. So is there any consideration for that in these severances and for the future?
Thank you through the chair. At the time of application, depending on what the proposal is, whether it be a single detached dwelling or if it is a plan of subdivision, if it is a plan of subdivision, that is something we can look at. But at this time, there was no concrete development proposal for the remainder of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I know we're not looking at that tonight, Councillor Goward, but I will say you brought it up, and it's a good point because I know we've talked about this in the past, how it's very narrow. So just maybe, Amanda, just something to put in the back of your head because it's a valid concern for sure. Any other questions for the planner at this time? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going to sound like old hat again, but anyhow, I was out and looking at this property this morning, and then I noticed there's no sign again. Well, there is a sign, but it's laying on the ground. So whoever puts them up needs to get some more nails and drive them in more than one just stake, because the stake is laying on the ground and the sign's laying on the ground. So just a comment for staff. Thank you.
And if we could pass that on to our director of plan as well, because I know for the next application, that exact same complaint come in as well. So we won't look for an answer, but we will expect better quality work, I guess, in the putting up of those stakes. I know we had some tremendously windy days, but still, yeah. Okay, point taken, Councilor Coleman. Any further questions, comments for our, questions at this point for our planner? Okay, seeing none, is there an applicant here tonight to speak to this? And I'll look to our clerk. Is it Bob Phillips talking to this one or no?
Mr. Chair, Scott Patterson is dialed in. So Scott, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Scott, we can hear you fine. Do you want to speak to your application tonight?
Yes, thank you, Chair Miller and members of committee. As noted, my name is Scott Patterson of Patterson Planning Consultants, here tonight in support of the application and the recommendation of staff. I have nothing further to add to Amanda's presentation. I'd like to thank her for that. And again, we just note that this is an application that is a result of a condition of a provisional consent that was approved earlier this year. It will effectively freeze the retained lands other than the newly created lot until water servicing capacity is available to the Mount Pleasant settlement area. So I see this as a good planning, and it allowed us to proceed with the development or creation of one lot, and we're still working towards clearing the conditions of that, including this zoning bylaw amendment. So I'm happy to answer any questions that committee may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patterson. Stay on the line, and we'll ask the committee, does any members have any questions for Mr. Patterson at this time? Okay, seeing none. I will ask our clerk if there's, I'd like to open this part of the meeting up to the public and ask them if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application.
Mr. Chair, no, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And I will ask the second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and we'll bring it back to the committee, and I'll ask the committee members how they would like to deal with this application. Councillor Pierce will move it. Councillor Coleman will second it. Any comments, questions, concerns from any committee member? See none, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, I don't see any. Mr. Patterson, we have approved it. And at the committee level, it has to go to our council meeting later this month for final approval. Okay?
Thank you, Chair Miller and members of committee.
Thank you, sir, for coming out tonight. Okay, that takes care of 8.2, and this brings us up to 8.3, and this is report 2197, ZBA 10-21, and this is from Prolific Estates Limited for 48 Fairfield Road, and that would be the greenhouses, which we seen last month for information purposes. So Amanda, do you have a presentation you want to go through? Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you see it, Chair? Perfect.
Yes.
All right. So thank you through the chair. The applicant is proposing to create, oops, wrong one. Sorry. Are you still able to see it? Perfect. Okay.
We're good.
Through the chair, the applicant is proposing to create 2 undersized farm parcels. The southerly farm parcel is expected to have an area of approximately 35 hectares and is to be farmed. The northerly lot is expected to have an area of 16.2 hectares in order to facilitate the construction, in order to facilitate a commercial greenhouse operation. And then in regards to the official plan, the subject lands are designated agricultural and will continue to be used for agricultural operations. The intent of the agricultural designation is to ensure that prime agricultural land and agricultural activities and the lifestyle of the County of Brant are protected and have the opportunity to flourish. And then in regards to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned agricultural, and the applicant is proposing site-specific provisions to facilitate this commercial greenhouse and site-specific provisions that were representative of the current industry standards. And then one of the takeaways from the information meeting was the questions the committee had in regards to the use of the greenhouses for cannabis. To address this, I have included a provision prohibiting cannabis as a permitted use, and the applicants have agreed to this provision as well. And then through the site plan control process, a detailed review of servicing, grading, and site design will be reviewed in order to ensure there is no impact on the surrounding properties. And I am recommending approval of this application and the site-specific provisions, including the provision of prohibiting cannabis. And I can answer any questions the committee members may have. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Amanda. Any questions for our planner at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will go to the applicant or their agent if they wish to present as well. Is it you, Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll kind of defer to the Slaymans. This is their application, and we certainly are in support of the planning recommendation.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Chair. So Stephanie Slayman speaking here. We do have a presentation if the council has time for that.
Yeah, go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Okay.
So if you want to go ahead,
I'll just begin sharing my screen.
I'll let you know when it's up. Okay, Stephanie, we're good.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here to delegate on behalf of our proposal. I'm Stephanie Slayman, and with me is Brian Slayman, the owner, and Teo Slayman, one of our operations managers. As you may recall, some of the details from the presentation will be a reiteration of the points from the April 6th meeting. And before I begin, I just wanted to thank Amanda for her coverage of the policy framework and those important aspects that are for your consideration on this proposal. So John Slayman's Greenhouses produces greenhouse agriculture products, which are protected under the Farming and Food Product Protection Act. Those floriculture products include chrysanthemum and lisianthus in a monitored growing controlled environment, which is facilitated by the greenhouse structure. They are grown from seed or cutting to a finished floriculture product and are grown in the ground. This is a multi-million-dollar investment into Brant County, and it will be the foundation of our agriculture business moving forward. So I won't speak much to the bylaw relief request as Amanda had covered it, but the bylaw reliefs that were requested are directly related to our operational needs to be a competitive farm and agriculture business utilizing standard and protected industry production practices for greenhouses, including the production of floriculture products. So the permitted use definition for our production type, the blackout curtains, the height restriction relief of the residents, and then the severance, which supports the land ownership transition. So all of these reliefs are, in our belief, in alignment and meet the parameters of the land use policies, including the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the County of Brant's official plan, and then the intention of the County of Brant zoning bylaw. I wanted to provide a quick summary to the key aspects that came up during the public consultation letters that were received, questions that we've received both in the previous meeting on April 6th and in other conversations with planning or other representatives from the Brant County or council members. So I know that some of the key questions arose around production, which we are a protected agriculture product under the Farming and Food Production Act, and this is a provincially mandated permitted use on agriculture lands. As you can see by this visual, which I think quite drastically shows blackout curtains like the Svensson's Obscura, which we will be implementing in our facility, do facilitate a 100% light emission reduction. Water use on site is part of the greenhouse production, is managed and monitored by the Ministry of Environment and the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs through the environmental permitting process. And we have an excellent operator record with both ministries. Further, water use on site is a closed system and is primarily facilitated by rainwater capture. So we will never receive, we will not be exceeding the 50,000 liter draw, which triggers the environmental permitting requirement for water draw from the environment. Additionally, related to retail and traffic impact, we're not a retail site. While we do have farm gate, not retail sales at the Burford location, the traffic to and from this particular site at what is currently 48 Fairfield, but will soon have a street address off of Maple Ave South. The site will be focused on production, and traffic will consist of employees, services, and deliveries, which do not exceed G-class vehicles. I've also provided a detailed greenhouse question and answer document, which I believe was submitted and included in the materials for this meeting. And these support a further understanding of greenhouse production practices, as well as being able to answer any additional questions this evening. So thank you so very much. Overall, we know that this project is facilitating economic development, as John Slayman Greenhouses is a local agriculture business and employer. The agriculture production and expansion of local agriculture is supported by the community, as outlined additionally in the recent community engagement in support for the new official plan for Brant County, released on March 2nd. And we believe we are in alignment and meet all the parameters of the land use policies and land frameworks. And we request your approval of the proposed site-specific changes as recommended by staff this evening. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. And I'll get you to stop sharing the screen. Perfect, because I can't see everyone. That's the problem. Do we have any questions for either the applicant or the applicant's agent at this time from the committee members? Okay, seeing none, I guess I'll ask a couple questions. Stephanie, were you able to see a couple of the letters written in that were in our package this evening? And you're on mute.
We did receive copies of, I don't believe so. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we were in receipt of, I believe there was 2 letters. One additionally also provided before the April 6th meeting. Yeah. And then another letter that was submitted just last week, I believe, in preparation for this meeting. Mm-hmm. Was there particular aspects that I could speak to?
No, I think I know you submitted a brief, and I thought that answered most of them. I do have a question. You talk about you won't be requiring more than 50,000 liters per day of water. Will that change if you build out the site as proposed? Because you're going to start, I guess, with 1 or 2 greenhouses, and then down the road, if things work out well, it looks like you'll have a few more greenhouses. Do you think you'll exceed that 50,000 liters per day?
Chair, that's an excellent question. No, we won't. As mentioned, we're a closed water system that's facilitated by rainwater capture. So the square footage of over 14,000 square meters, thank you, Tim, allows for quite a large rainwater collection that is then stored in a rainwater collection tank that we use to facilitate production needs for water use. And this allows us to support both an environmental footprint as we use less water from, a well water draw, but it also facilitates the production quality of our plants. The rainwater capture is to be frank, we can just manage it more efficiently and are sure of the natural aspects, sodium qualities, nitrates, things like that, that are normally and very understandably found in water, the H2O components.
Okay, I want to ask about chemicals. Are there any chemicals you use on the flowers that any of the neighbors should be concerned about? That might get into the groundwater?
No. So the Ministry of Environment has very strict protocols around any pesticide use. The intention and the best practices of our business have been to move through to almost 100% biological control methods for what are called, negative insects. So what that means is we use natural predators to take care of any what concerns we might, mitigate any concerns that we might have. And then the pesticide use that we do use, I am very proud to say that as a Canadian operator, there is a comprehensive system that regulates and manages pesticide use on all farms. We fall under that regulatory structure. We get annual inspections about our pesticide use, and the pesticide use that we do use is necessary and only limited to the very small amounts that we require that are managed above the biologicals. And we're proud to say that that's a very small amount. And then speaking back to the concern of whether that could ever enter the water system, I would say that there really is no possibility, because all water is collected throughout the structure, and any use of water lines for propagation, things like that, it's all recaptured again, and then it's treated before it's returned into the infiltration basin.
Okay,
I hope
and
that's
then
answered your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it is a concern, right? Not tonight's letter, but I know in the previous information meeting that was a concern. And then my last question would be the shading that you showed in one of your slides. That's going to be incorporated into the build itself, and that'll be there from day one. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Chair. So that obscura curtaining is part of the height restriction relief that we had requested, so that it can be implemented along all of the structure, roof and siding of any of the transparent glass aspects of the greenhouse. And that will be installed before any of the interior mechanics, such as the lighting. So it will be there before the lighting gets turned on, for sure.
Okay, that I think that's comforting to hear.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, just to add to Stephanie's comments.
Okay, I never caught a word of that. You were breaking up or I was breaking up. What? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. Just to add to the comments that Stephanie mentioned, the blackout shading, the height restriction that we asked for alleviation from is to implement the structural requirements for the shading. And that is part of our growing process. That will be installed prior to any production. Yeah, the lights will be one of the last parts to go up, and we won't turn them on until we have plants in the ground. And the plants that are being grown require the blackout shading.
Okay, that makes sense. Appreciate the answer. Any other questions then for the applicant before we go to the public? Okay, thank you. I'll look to our clerk to see if there's anybody from the public that wishes to address this application.
Mr. Chair, no, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, appreciate that. But I will ask a second time, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application? And I'll ask a third and final time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And not seeing or hearing anyone, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll ask the committee how they would like to deal with this application. It's moved by Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Howes. Is there any further questions, comments, discussions on this? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, see none. To Brian, Stephanie, and Teo, it's been approved at the planning committee here tonight. It has to go to our council meeting at the end of this month. Once it's done that, there is I believe, a 20-day period to see if there's anybody that wishes to appeal it. But once that's all done, yeah, it's all good. So appreciate you coming out tonight. I appreciate the answers, and I wish you the best of luck. So, okay, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that concludes section 8, where we had 3 applications for a recommendation of either approval or not approving for a decision. Consent items, we don't have any. Staff reports, is there? We don't have any. Is there anything you wanted to share tonight, Matt?
Nope, nothing more to share. Thanks very much.
Okay, hold on one second. Is there something going on tomorrow night, Matt? Is there an official plan walkthrough or something like that? We don't have any.
Tomorrow? No,
Or
I don't believe
Thursday,
so.
Thursday night. Sorry, Thursday of this week. We don't have anything. Okay. Thought we did. I'll have to look that up. Other business, we have none in camera. That was just some. That was minutes, so they've been approved already. So the next meeting is June 1st. So I will call this meeting adjourned. Oh, Councilor Gabbard, you got anything to add, or moving to adjourn? Okay, we'll accept that, and I'll wish everybody a good night.
Good night.